I wanted to talk about DC as it related to the Oscars, and I chose today to be a good point to do it because CinemaCon is about to be happening. James Gunn is presumably going to take the stage later today and kind of like announce the future of DC. And I have a lot of worries about it. I think DC is a studio that we're going to be talking about in this video that is known for an artistic flair and achievement, maybe not synonymous with superhero movies. For better or for worse, DC has made a name for themselves in creativity in a way that can be quite divisive, that we saw in Snyder's visions, but it also makes it stand out in an artistic way that I just don't think Marvel has really been able to capture outside of like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Like, I don't think it's really there otherwise. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about these 11 films. These are 11 DC films that got nominated for Academy Awards. They all serve different purposes. Some of them receive more acclaim than others. Some of them just receive like the basic special effects. But I think there is something you guys will agree with. And this is also going to be me discussing some of my anxieties of the next chapter of DC and exploring this, because ultimately my biggest fear is that I don't want DC to be a franchise that essentially loses all artistic credibility. And I think that's something that the first really like close to 100 years of DC has actually been able to achieve on screen, that I'm really worried after seeing that Superman trailer that maybe it's not going to be there for much longer. But without further ado, let's talk about this. So coming in at number 11, which I just think by a mile is the worst film on this list. I hate Superman Returns. This film, for those who do not know, it was nominated at the 79th Academy Awards for visual effects. There's nothing positive I have to say about this movie. I think the acting in this movie is extremely dull. I hate how they tried to essentially take the Christopher Reeves character, because this is supposed to be a continuation on that character, and how they try to modernize it with these actors. I believe Brandon Routh is the name of the actor who plays Superman in this. I just find it an abysmal effort. Bryan Singer just way out of his element. He was able to achieve something special with those X-Men films at first. Nothing in this film works. I think it is dull to look at. I think all the casting is very lazy. Kevin Spacey is like a surprisingly uninspired choice for Lex Luthor, and I think he does not capture the manic performance that Gene Hackman does so well. And yeah, no, I think, is it Kate Bosworth, I believe, plays Lois Lane in this movie? Like, Superman's like low-key a stalker in this film. Like, this to me is just bottom of the barrel. I don't think any DC film will be worse than Superman Returns to me. I find this movie so abhorrent. I think it is awful to watch. Nothing has ever made me more frustrated watching a superhero movie. Like, legitimately, this might be bottom 10 films of all time. If you like this movie, let me know in the comments. And if you like this movie, subscribe to the channel. But that's not important right now. Let's talk about number 10, which this is where we actually get some divisiveness. Suicide Squad. This is a DC Oscar-winning film. That's right. 89th Academy Award, won makeup and hairstyling, beat out Star Trek Beyond. That was the other big film nominated that year. Let's just kind of talk about this, because I don't hate this movie as much as other people dislike it. I don't think this movie's good. I wouldn't even say that this movie is bad. Like, it's probably like pretty bad. Here's what I will say. There is a clear vision unfolding in this movie, and it looks a certain way for a certain reason. With that said, the aesthetic of this movie, I think, is abysmal. I think David Ayer has no control of tone in this movie. I think this movie is wacky for wacky's sake. It's, this is the same year as Deadpool, and it feels like a movie that comes like a response to Deadpool, even though this was probably shot about the same time as Deadpool. But yeah, ultimately, like, I look at this movie and I think like this is at least trying to be something. Again, what it's trying to be is a Jared Leto like Joker movie with like Will Smith doing his quips, and you got Harley Quinn as like what's her name? Margaret Robbie. Margot Robbie. That's her name. Took me forever. You have Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. Like, there's stuff that's inspired in this movie. Again, there's a musical soundtrack in this movie that is horrendous. It's just like, what if we just got like 15 random songs on most people's Spotify and just like threw them into a movie, this movie does not work fundamentally. However, like I said, there is a visual flair that when we're talking about the competitor, Marvel in this scenario, Marvel doesn't really look like this. And to Marvel's credit, it's good that it doesn't look like this, but it's also distinctly DC and something that you can now understand why it gets makeup and hairstyling. Again, makeup and hairstyling for this movie is ridiculous. Like, Jared Leto looks like such garbage. I mean, this must be due to the El Diablo character, and Killer Croc is the only reason I can think this gets. I guess Harley Quinn's fairly well designed enough in this movie. But yeah, no, ultimately, this movie's kind of a disaster. It's fun at moments, like Will Smith has a few scenes. I'm spending way too much time on this movie. Ultimately, it is nominated for makeup and hairstyling. It wins. Should have been Star Trek Beyond that here. Let's jump over to number 9. This, Batman Forever. So, this one tears a lot of people up. And I'm 27. Let me know in the comments, because for me, this movie actually like kind of means something. Kind of means something in the way that like I remember this being on ABC Family pretty like regularly. So like I have an affinity for this movie. If you were above a certain age, I'm curious if you like this movie. And that's what I want you guys to let me know in the comments section below. Maybe I should have done this video live, but like, does anyone care about this movie? Does anyone like this movie kind of the way that I like secretly like this movie? Again, not a good movie. Tommy Lee Jones is just bizarre in this movie. I don't know what he's doing with this character. Jim Carrey and him are like kind of going to war on screen. Like, Tommy Lee Jones feels like he's doing a Jim Carrey impression, and it makes for this like weird tone in this film. Joel Schumacher like really embraces the campiness of this story. Val Kilmer is actually pretty decent as Batman. I really like his Bruce Wayne. Nicole Kidman, is Nicole Kidman. I will watch her in everything and anything, and she is just, 100% locked into whatever she's doing, even as abysmally bad as this film is. Oh, I should mention this. Okay. Please, 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 if you're watching this video, just leave it in my comments below. I'm going to give you guys a second. This film got nominated for 3 Oscars. Can you name the 3 Oscars? No one, unless you're just like a huge Oscar nerd, is going to pull this. But I will reveal it right now. So lock those comments down below. Sound. It got nominated for sound and sound effects. It lost to Apollo 11 for sound, and for sound effects editing, it lost to Braveheart. It also lost to Braveheart in another category. This I couldn't believe. Did you guys know Batman Forever was nominated for its cinematography and lost to Braveheart at that year's Academy Awards, at the 68th Academy Awards? It was nominated up against Braveheart and lost. That's like crazy to me that Batman Forever got like a cinematography. And again, I actually like Joel Schumacher's production design and the way that he lights his movies. Like, I think there is I think there is an inherent campiness that is echoing back to Adam West. With that said, like, it is still bizarre to me that this movie got a cinematography nomination. But again, that's just like the thing. This is like a low point for DC. And could you see like any MCU film getting a cinematography Oscar nomination? I'm pretty sure Black Panther didn't. Like, can you imagine that? Like what's the DC equivalent of this? Or sorry, what's the Marvel equivalent? Like, if the Marvels got a cinematography nomination, maybe being more generous, like if Captain America Civil War got an Oscar nomination for cinematography, like, I don't know. And again, I like this movie more than others. Again, it's a movie that I understand isn't good, but again, there is a specific tone that harkens back to an era of superhero movies, and specifically with DC. This feels very in line with what they were doing in the 90s and how a lot of films were trying to be, especially capturing the Jim Carrey essence. Like, there is a uniqueness to this, and that's kind of what I appreciate, and what I'm a little bit concerned that is being lost with James Gunn's vision for DC. I just want these movies to, at some points, like, feel different from one another. And if you've kind of noticed, like, Superman Returns, Suicide Squad, Batman Forever so far, like, those are all films that feel incredibly different from each other. And that brings us over to our next film, which this is Superman the Mad Scientist. I had never actually watched this film up until yesterday when I was prepping for this video. This is from 1941, which is the Citizen Kane year, if I'm correct. This was 14th Academy Award ceremony. It was nominated for animated short. It lost to Pluto Lend a Paw, I think is what it's called. I think it's called Lend a Paw. It's Pluto the dog from Mickey Mouse. So Superman lost to Walt Disney. Like, watching this movie, this feels like the staple for what was to come in the 1990s with the animated movies, or animated TV shows, I should say, that then eventually led into movies. This feels like the predecessor to those, like to Batman the Animated Series, to Justice League, to Superman. Like, this movie is essentially telling us the origin story of Superman in the first, it's a 10-minute runtime. Like, first 2 minutes, if that, are spent like on Krypton. Superman comes to Earth. Superman, Clark Kent explain. Mad scientists like run amok. Superman saves the day. Incredible score in this. Like, check it out. It's on YouTube. I'll try sharing it if I remember into the link in my description below. But like, it's everything that you kind of picture with the iconography of Superman and some of the famous terminology. Like, he can leap buildings in a single bound. Like, all of that stuff's like in this. And it's like captures it well. And it also feels like early essence of what we would get with Superman 1978, which will be coming up on this list later. It's really, like I said, it's kind of interesting to watch this film for 35 years. Is that correct? Like 37 years, like before John Williams comes in and does his famous score for Superman. Like, you hear, like, it's crazy because you can kind of feel it build on 30 years later. Like, it is interesting in that way. This is actually released by Paramount originally, so they had the rights to Superman. But no, this is a good movie. You guys should check it out. I think anyone who's a fan of DC will get a kick out of this, like, early rendition of the character that we all know. Next one coming on this list, number 7. Obviously, I had to include this. This is kind of like, in many ways, the grand experiment of DC. This is what DC can do differently than Marvel. This is like them showing up Marvel in many ways. Like, Marvel makes the Marvel Cinematic Universe that leads to Endgame in that year. In 2019, DC can make Joker, a movie that I don't particularly like. 92nd Academy Award. Let's see. It has a few key nominations, 11 nominations to be specific, including picture, director, screenplay, and it won for Best Actor and Score. This is going to be a video that I may do next week where I'm kind of just anticipating, or looking back, I should say. Looking back at the past however many years, probably from 1974, I think is it. Essentially, here's what I'm trying to say. I'm going to be doing like kind of a retrospect on actors who won their Academy Award for... No, that's not what I'm trying to say. Maybe I'll edit this part out. Here's what I'm trying to say. Godfather Part 2 comes out, Al Pacino loses. He ends up winning it for Scent of a Woman years later. Essentially, I'm going to do the 10 times the Oscars just got it completely wrong. Like, Al Pacino should have won his Godfather Part 2 Oscar. Like, that should be the one that wins it to him. So we're going to be looking through that, and I think I'm going to be doing that Barry of 1975 to 2025. That's what I'm trying to say. But essentially, what was I trying to make with that point? Joker, that's the point that I was trying to make. Joker is a movie that I don't really care for. With that said, the Joaquin Phoenix performance is in many ways undeniable. Like, this is probably the right film for him to win for, which is kind of crazy to say, but like, Yeah, no, ultimately, this is a pretty important performance in Joaquin Phoenix's career. This is a big move by DC. This film, like I said, falls short. I think it is, in many ways, like a bad Scorsese ripoff. I just don't think Phillips, he may understand the aesthetic of Scorsese. I've never thought he particularly understood the world of Scorsese, which I think is a huge differential point. And it's like what frustrates me with Joker. With that said, like this film is undeniable, 11 nominations. Like this is a big deal, and it's again kind of what sets DC apart. And we are hearing all of these rumors, and maybe I should wait to it because we'll get to it specifically a little later with some of the other films that we're going to be talking about. But like, it looks like DC is abandoning this Elseworld project of they can make their own cinematic universe and they can have these Elseworld independent stories, almost, if you will. I don't know if that's going to pay off, and like maybe there should be a few more Jokers. And I guess it's easy to axe the Elseworld project when your last one was Joker Fall They Do, but we'll get to it because we need to talk about it on a film that's coming up that is very much in the middle of that question right now. Coming up next on this list, number 6, we got Batman Begins. Let me adjust this camera just slightly. Nolan. This is Nolan entering DC. This is obviously one of the most important trilogies of the 21st century. Like, and obviously with that said, we're going to get to The Dark Knight. Like, Batman Begins, nominated for cinematography, lost to Memoirs of Geisha. Like, this movie is a lot of things. I think this is a very clear stepping stone for Nolan to get into the DC universe. This is a movie where you really feel like Nolan trying to access something that he's not fully there for just yet. Obviously, he gets there, he climbs the mountain, but you can kind of feel some of the unevenness of this movie. Some of that's just due to the unfortunate casting of this film. I don't think Katie Holmes is particularly good in this film. Like, there is imagery in this film where you're like, oh, okay, like they are capturing Batman. And then there's other stuff where you're like, Nolan's kind of like out of his comfort zone right now. Like, it's very interesting that this is the movie that for Nolan, like, gets him the ability to be the Prestige and then, finesse those skills later into The Dark Knight to Inception. Everything that we know comes post. Ultimately, like, with that all said, I mean, I really like Batman Begins. Like, it's hard not to watch this film and think, like, this is a bad film. I think this is a really solid foundation for Batman. Like, ultimately, like, this is, and again, this elevates Batman in a way. Like, Batman was a joke before this movie came out. And, like, Nolan's able to capture something. And again, harking back to Marvel, which is the thing that I kind of keep talking about in this whole James Gunn of it all. Like, I just like, can you imagine Christopher Nolan working under James Gunn? Like, and I guess this is also the issue that we're seeing with Marvel in so many ways, where it's just like, you need to have a style synonymous with what we are trying to build as our foundation of our cinematic universe. So you can't really do your own thing. Like, I guess in my mind, Marvel has always kind of been like that. Like, they've always had a certain look and aesthetic, and maybe that has dropped in quality. DC doesn't. And Batman Begins is kind of the retroactively them reestablishing themselves as, we walk at a different beat. And I'm like a little nervous at the idea of like, hey, are we going to get that anymore? With that all said, like I said, Batman Begins, not much else to say about this movie. We're going to be pretty Batman heavy, as you can kind of guess. Like, Batman is kind of the reason that I can make this video and talk about it, because Batman is a character rich in Oscar history, especially with the Joker, which, again, we're going to get to in a second. But, like, this is, like, a story that has always worked with the Academy. So let's just jump over to the other big one. Yeah. Here we go. I know some people are probably going to be a little shocked that I have this at number 5, 62nd Academy Award Art Direction win for Batman, 1989. What, I mean, like, eventually I should do a review of this film, and I should bring somebody on to talk about this film. Here are my feelings towards Batman. I think this movie is incredibly influential, and I think it's holding back Tim Burton a little bit more than I'd want it to. And we're going to get to that with another Tim Burton movie on this list in a second. But like, ultimately, like, I've seen Batman done better by the time that I saw Batman 1989. So I had that little bit of a disconnect. With that said, what this film does well is kind of incredible. The art achievement of this film, which obviously it won for its art direction, like it's undeniable. This film looks a certain way. The makeup on Jack Nicholson in this film, the costuming, like the way Gotham City feels alive in this movie, and it also very clearly feels like a set. It doesn't feel like the real world. This is a movie that is also fundamentally different from the iteration of Batman we saw before, like Adam West. Like, again, it's just a capturing of already on this list that we've talked about. Batman Forever, Joker, Batman Begins, Batman 1989. Like, those all feel distinct in their visual landscape. And like, I just can't say that about Marvel in many ways. And again, this isn't a Marvel bash, like, to be clear. Like, I may do a video discussing Marvel at the Oscars as well. But like, ultimately, when I'm thinking about this film, I'm just left with like this thing where it's just like, is this a bygone era? And I don't think it should be, because DC had been able to prove that like they can still work in this mode of operation. Like, Joker is an example of them doing what made Batman's good. Like, Joker has a very specific art direction. Joker Folie à Deux has that. Is it a failure of a film otherwise? Yes. Does that film have some undeniably gorgeous cinematography, art direction in that film? Like, absolutely yes. And that's what I don't really want to see them move away from. I want to see DC be able to match what came before and essentially build off of it. I don't want them to just basically be like, we need to uniform ourselves. That's what I'm scared of. Batman 1989, like I said, Michael Keaton's incredible in this movie. Kim Basinger, like Jack Nicholson, like this movie's just like the Prince stuff. Like, I love that soundtrack, and it's not good. Like, I can address that like it's not good, but I also love it. Let's jump over to the other one. This is controversial. Number 4, I have Batman Returns. 65th Academy Awards. Makeup, lost to Dracula. Visual effects, lost to Death Becomes Her. You know, I'm a huge Tim Burton fan. Anyone who's seen my thoughts on Beetlejuice kind of knows that. Like, I grew up on Tim Burton. Like, in many ways, I am inspired by him. It's the reason I talk about movies, because I watched his films all the time as a kid. Batman Returns is the film that I think best captures Tim Burton and Batman together. Like, this is the perfect marriage of it. And I think that's in many ways due to the Danny DeVito collaboration in this film, the heavy leather of this movie from Michelle Pfeiffer. Like, this movie feels grittier. It feels more disgusting. It feels more cartoonish in many ways. Like, I think this movie takes far bigger swings and really connects more often. Like, this is a movie that is not for everybody, and I know some people hate it. And obviously this was kind of critically divisive when it originally came out. I just look at this movie and I just kind of think like, wow, this is an artistic achievement in a way that I just don't think many other films have been. So that's going to be my defense of Batman Returns, which brings us to number 3, which is, let me put it on here real quick. We got 2022's The Batman. This, I kind of couldn't believe this. Like, I re-looked at my notes, I should say, yesterday. And I was like, wow, I don't remember the Batman getting visual effects. Losing to Avatar, Way of Water, of course. Like, I don't remember it getting makeup and hairstyling. In that case, it lost to The Whale. Like, getting sound, lost to Top Gun Maverick. I do remember it missing out key nominations. Cinematography was one that I remember. It's like, this movie has gorgeous cinematography. Like, even if you dislike the tone and what Matt Reeves is doing, like, it's kind of undeniable. Score by Giacchino is like one of the best superhero scores we've had of the past decade. Like, that's another crazy one that gets missed. But like, and this is going to be, and we're going to see if this plays out tonight when James Gunn is talking about it. We are hearing so much rumors about the fact that we may never get a Batman 2. Like, we are hearing that the fact that this film's Penguin, Colin Farrell, who's Matt Reeves' guy, who was in the Penguin show, that may earn him an Emmy nomination is what I meant to say, could even earn him the win along with his co-star Kristen Milodia. Is that how you pronounce her name? However you pronounce her name. Like that may earn those two actors Emmy nominations and possible wins. And we might not get a sequel to this. We might not get a sequel to what is really the most popular, DC thing of, since really Joker, post-COVID. This is the most popular DC thing. And this is the most lucrative. It obviously had a big year in 2024 with the Penguin, spinoff. This is what's worked so far for you. And you're able to get into a film with Matt Reeves. And now we're at, this point where these two guys, James Gunn and Matt Reeves, are seemingly clashing. You have Robert Pattinson, pretty hot right now. Really, has earned himself a lot of goodwill. Zoe Kravitz, Paul Dano, Colin Farrell after an Oscar nomination and a possible Emmy nomination /win. Again, you should kind of be building this up. Matt Reeves should be a guy that, people seem to have enough in stake with the Batman. Build off of it and, make the Batman 2. The fact that James Gunn, I don't know how else to read this besides, Colin Farrell is, being placed in the middle of these two, and James Gunn is kind of just, showing Matt Reeves up. He's you know what? I'm going to take one of your best actors. I'm just going to take it. Clayface was what we heard rumors of. He was supposed to be the villain of the Batman 2. And now he has his own, film within this DC universe under James Gunn that's supposedly going to star Kieran Culkin. I think that was the rumor of Kieran Culkin. What are we talking about here? And now you're taking away, Colin Farrell. Again, I find this whole thing really weird, really bizarre. This is kind of egos run amok. With that said, I really like the Batman. I think this movie's incredibly fun. It really worked for me in the tone, and seeing this movie in IMAX really delivered for me. So let's just jump over to the next film. And sorry, I have to just keep uploading these. You're going to believe A Man Can Fly. This is one of the most important films of the 1970s. This is in many ways, the grandfather of superhero stories. It is Superman. Obviously, we all know we were going to get to this point. 51st Academy Award. Loses sound award to Deer Hunter. Music score loses to Midnight Express, which is crazy. Anybody who loves film knows that Superman score. It's so influential. It's so foundational to what we think of when we think Superman. Special Achievement Award visuals. It won that. This movie's special. You know how I talked about, Batman 1989? That movie didn't, really work for me. Not that it didn't work for me, but, I had seen what comes later and responded more to that. Superman's not the case. Superman, I think, actually is fairly timeless. I think, and it's so largely due to Christopher Reeve's, performance in that movie. Truth, justice, the American way. Everything that Superman stands for. A better tomorrow. All of that's here. And I think that's the most important thing. The tagline of this movie, you'll believe that a man can fly. That's so true with Christopher Reeves. He is a superhero in my mind. He is Superman. I believe that still to this day. When I think superheroes, I think, this guy right here, I think Christopher Reeve is Superman. It's so fundamentally important. This movie, it rocks. There's no other way to get around it. This movie's really good. I really loved this movie. And like I said, what do you want James Gunn to be able to do? Is you want him to be able to reflect on this. You want him to be able to build on what made this film here in particular special. Zack Snyder does his own thing with Man of Steel. And I like what Zack Snyder does in Man of Steel. But this is the film everyone wants to see. Everyone wants to believe. Everyone wants to believe in goodness, in the dream. This is the dream right here. And then number one, we all know what it is. And I just have to add it to the screen real quick. I mean, like, obviously this was number one. When we're talking about the DC at the Oscars, this, like, film fundamentally reshapes the Oscars. Like, it doesn't get the Best Picture nomination, and it kind of becomes dubbed as the Dark Knight rule, which is why they expanded to 10. Like, here's, like, obviously a win supporting actor and a win sound editing. And, like, I could go on and on about the Heath Ledger performance in this movie. All you need to know is it's brilliant, and it's as good as everyone has told you if you haven't seen it, which I don't think that person exists, especially someone who's watching this channel. I don't think you've gone this far in life without seeing The Dark Knight. Other nominations it gets. This is the Slumdog Millionaire year. Sound mixing loses to Slumdog. Art direction loses to Curious Case. Cinematography loses to Slumdog. Makeup and hairstyling loses to Curious Case Benjamin Button. Film editing loses to Slumdog. Visual effects, Curious Case. 8 nominations, 2 wins. Obviously, the most important win being Heath Ledger, the Joker. Like, this is the beauty. Like, this is lightning in a bottle, and lightning in a bottle seems to be more accessible for DC. And that's what I essentially kind of hope we don't lose. I don't want to see DC lose out on what makes it so special, which is the ability to do something cinematic. I think DC is able to be cinematic in a way that Marvel has never really been able to do. And I think that's even foundational to the comics. DC is a movie and stories about space, about exploration, about gods amongst humans. Like, Batman is the smallest scale we get. DC is, or has always been that. Marvel, on the other hand, Marvel has been far more trying to relate and be into this world. This is obviously Stan Lee being based in New York. So many of these characters are based in New York. Like, there is something that is inherently a little bit smaller about Marvel. DC is able to have this cinematic excellence that I think is built into the foundation of its inception in the 1920s. Like, that's what I want to see built on, and that's what I hope we don't lose. So hopefully today, after this panel from James Gunn, I can be convinced that if we see anything or if I hear about anything like that, I'm like, okay, we're not losing that DC. Because even as bad as the past decade has been for DC, and trust me, they've been bad. Flash was bad. Joker Fall they do. Like, Shazam Fury of the Gods. Like, Black Adam. Like, so many miss after miss after miss after miss. Like, I get it. But, like, I'd rather them be able to, every so often, like, give me a Dark Knight. Give me the Batman. Give me even the Joker. Like, I'd rather see that from them than for the next 10 years of DC storytelling to all feel the same. And that's my fear. And that's why I think in my thesis, like, that is why I think DC has always done kind of secretly not that bad at the Oscars. Like, there's always been that talk of a superhero genre bias. Maybe that's true for the above the lines, like Best Picture, but like DC, like, in many ways, like, kind of goes up against that notion. It's like, actually, like, when we make something recognizably great, they usually do give us a few big nominations. And I think that's important. And I think that's like kind of everything that I wanted to talk about today. So thank you so much for watching this video. And I hope you consider subscribing for more. Let me know what you guys want to hear from me next. Like I said, I made this decision on this channel, and it ultimately came with a Minecraft movie where I'm just like, do I want to torture myself and go watch a Minecraft movie so I can put up 3 to 4 videos a week on reviews of movies that I just, like, obviously I know the quality even before I step in. Maybe I'll be surprised at Minecraft, haven't seen it yet. Or do I want to kind of just, like, start experimenting and engage with you guys and see what you like, see what you don't like. Like, so if you like this, or if you want to see other stuff or anything like that, let me know in the comments below, because I'm really listening and I really want to build off what you guys want to see from me. So thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll be back maybe Thursday.